Welcome to episode 6 of the third season of the Simply Verified Beef podcast. The title of this episode is Trusted Product, and we're going to be talking about the value of branding for producers that are direct marketing their beef to consumers. Our guest for this episode is Stanley Christensen. He is a beef producer from Quebec and runs Ferme Sage. We'll be talking about how beef producers can market their farm story to the consumer and what consumers actually want to know. This month, we'll also be releasing the episode in French, courtesy of Catherine Larrivée-Bazinet.
Stan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and your farm?
Well, I was raised on a family farm, a mixed farm in New Brunswick, and went to school in Ottawa. That's how I ended up in this region. And because we're near a ski area, about 100 kilometers north of Ottawa, ended up here. I was a skier and still am. Actually moved here officially in 1972, that is. So the farm here, where I met my wife, we got married in 1975. It's in a farm that's in her family since 1846. So it was settled because it was near the Gatineau River, and the initial start here was logging and putting the logs in the river and floating them down the river. So we have a view of that. So when I look out the window to the west, we can see the Gatineau River, and on the east, I have the mountain with the ski area on it. And so we have a great spot. What we do here, we've started out with a commercial herd that Charles' father had, and we developed it into a purebred herd starting in 1986. And became all purebred red Angus, and was a full Angus herd since 1992. Then we expanded somewhat, and we're selling purebred breeding stock, selling some calves at the auction, and as a way of adding value to the animals that were not selected for breeding or for sale as bred females or breeding bulls. We decided to start a program of beef actually selling them, and that fit well with our selection process, because we were one of the first to do full ultrasound on the animals, try to select for better quality of carcass and more marbling, and feeling that's a really important part of beef for today for our customers. So we've been doing that since 2002, and consistently selling beef every year.
Great, thank you. So Stan, could you tell us a little bit about how you sell your beef? Do you sell in bulk, like in quarters and halves, or more in individual cuts? And then is there anything that you process further than whole cuts, like burger patties, sausages, anything like that?
All the work's done. We deal with live animals and the processed product. So we sell 90% is sold as individual cuts, which adds its own challenge and whatever. But we sell a few quarters or halves to a few longtime customers that insist on that. We have quite a long waiting list for those, as we want to schedule in making sure that we have a variety of cuts available at all times. So that all of that's done at the abattoir, or the abattoir Bowman. They prepare burger patties for the restaurant trade that we supply. Sausages, multiple recipes. Smoked meat packages are really popular with the summer crowd and people who come to the market, whatever, really want us to bring along quite a lot in smoked meat.
That's really interesting to hear that there's different products that are popular there. I know here in Alberta, where I'm from, we see a lot of like burger patty and smoked meat packages we wouldn't think of. So interesting to hear kind of the regional differences there. What channels do you use to sell and advertise your beef?
So most of our promotion is through local events, sponsoring local charity events, activities, through the golf course. We're members at the golf course, and we're right nearby. I have a lot of friends who have chalets who play golf. Through the ski hill, we supply the ground beef patties to the ski hill each winter. So we're the only supplier of their beef there, and just local events basically. And we had a restaurant that we were there was one of our first clients that put a big stand burger on the menu, and they still have it. So that was always a selling point. People would say, well, can I come and get some of that at your place?
That's great. It's interesting to hear the real community involvement that you guys have. It's something that maybe we don't see here in this region either, is that really local marketing. It's often reaching a little further into the big cities. So that's great to hear.
Well, that's one of the reasons we did it. We decided that, well, I've been involved in agricultural organizations all along, and people say, well, I want my region to develop a notoriety, so that's going to help me sell my product. But I've always taken it the reverse way. A region is only known by the quality and the notoriety of the people that are there with their products. And that's why we want it to be exclusive to here. If you want our product, you got to come here.
Yeah, very interesting. That's a great marketing idea. Who's your customer base? Like, is there a particular type of customer that you see most often, or sort of your typical target customer that you think of?
Our customers are mainly residents, and we have two types of residents here because of the lakes and ski resort. We have our permanent residents. There's about 600 in our municipality. And then when we take the surrounding region, because we sell quite a bit outside of the municipality and the adjoining municipalities, we also have here, along with the 600 permanent residents, we have people that have chalets, cottages, which cottage today can be a multi-million-dollar building near the lake or whatever. They're here. There's 2,500 of those. So there's a really large number. And when they come along, they so often are good clients. They'll bring friends or send friends and whatever. So we have, with that group of customers, we have all we need. In fact, we don't really need new customers. We try to make sure that we offer our old customers the best service we can give them.
Wow. So yeah, it sounds like, really, again, locally driven, and lots of word of mouth coming in with tourism, which is great too. So how does sales logistics work? Do customers come to pick up their beef? Do you kind of have a delivery route? Sounds like local is, making that easier, but how does your sales work?
Well, a lot of our customers will call ahead or text ahead or email ahead, asking what we have available, and usually we'll make an appointment to come and pick up. Majority is picked up. Some people have larger orders or whatever. We can meet them somewhere or deliver. So everything's taken care of that way. But a lot of people want to come here because they can take that few kilometer drive along the water, coming to our place, come and see things. Sometimes they'll bring children so they can see some animals. The whole thing is an experience, I think, that's more important than a lot of people talk about just the quality of your product and everything. Here, it's the experience of coming to a farm and actually getting their beef from a place where they get to know the people.
Yeah, so a real personal feel for sure. That's great.
Yeah, and we pick up the product all frozen in boxes, and we have walk-in freezer, freezer trailer, multiple freezers in a little boutique. We call it the beef boutique, and so then the ones that come, they can select from that and leave with their product frozen. And Cheryl spends a lot of time with a lot of the people, so it helps them a little bit prepare, maybe pick a cut that they're not used to and know how to prepare it.
I love that, beef boutique. That's very catchy. So yeah, you mentioned that your customers largely buy individual cuts. So how do you manage that inventory? Are you processing animals kind of on a regular schedule, or do you kind of work it according to demand and when there's higher demand for certain cuts?
We schedule at the abattoir 1 year in advance our kill dates, and then we try to prepare the animals so that they'll be ready at those times. And we do basically 3 every month with the occasional add-in. And then that's the way it works for that. And when we have something, then people can come pick up. But we do have a large number of people that will place special orders ahead of time. One thing that's become really popular in the last years is a tomahawk steak, and so we've got about 4 months in advance of ordered tomahawks, and uh, we're challenged a little bit. Some people want to buy only the preferred cuts, and we tend to put them farther down the waiting list uh, over people who will buy a variety of cuts, and we try to encourage them to say that you can't have just tenderloin, which is a lot of the questioning people have. You know, they want to buy one cut, and then we have to explain to them tenderloin is 1% of carcass. We got to work with the other 99%. So, but sometimes that encourages them to pick something else and look at exploring a little bit when they cook.
That's great. Yeah, I think that that personal element that you mentioned of them actually coming in would really help with that education piece because yeah, to them it's just a cut. It, you know, it comes from somewhere, it's always available, but inventory doesn't work that way. And like you said, there's planning a year in advance. So, you know, you really have to work within what's available.
Yeah, they, you know, like a lot of people don't realize they go to a store and they can always pick what they want. Here, they can pick what they want from what we have a little bit, and so it's kind of fun. It creates a lot of discussion and everything, and actually, it's a good learning for everybody else to appreciate everything what's in the store. They often don't appreciate the effort that goes into raising and harvesting an animal and getting it ready so that it's a quality piece of beef.
That's great. Yeah. So, along the lines of that educational opportunity we talked about, what are some of the most common questions that customers ask about your product or want to know more about?
Most people ask a little bit of how they're fed. One question that comes often are they grass fed, but you know, we uh, we just have them talk about a whole lot of things, and mainly it's just conversation and how we're doing, and we appreciate that our most of our clients are helping us by being our client, and we appreciate that, and they appreciate having someone in their area that does this. I think there's a general sense of thankfulness that everybody can participate and have a farm around that's actually producing something that they can actually get when they come along.
Yeah, I think there's that real desire now that people want to be more connected to where their food comes from. And so it's great. I think they would be really thankful to have that opportunity to actually interact with you personally and feel the personal connection to your business, but also you as a family and you know what purchasing food there means beyond just a good meal.
Yeah, we have, if we're at the ski hill and somebody sees something about beef, you know, often at lunchtime they'll come with cutouts from the newspaper or something or website. They say, "Oh, we see this about beef. You know, how's that work at your place?" And you know, that's part of our just our general community. Everybody is involved in it.
I love hearing that, you know, people come to you when they see things in the media or that they have questions about. It's great to know that they will turn to a farmer in their life to ask those questions and understand better. And I think that's, you know, for the general public, they don't maybe have that kind of person in their life to ask those questions. And I think that's an interesting benefit of direct marketing too. And I'm curious, do you think direct marketing makes it easier for you to tell your story and you know the story of the beef industry as a whole versus marketing through the broader supply chain?
Well, originally, well, people ask, that is one question that I didn't address. What do people ask? Uh, One of them is about how we can take care of the environment, and questions about greenhouse gases. Anything comes along, well, because I spend a lot of time associated with numerous groups and reading a lot, so I have some things which aren't necessarily answers. Sometimes they're questions again, but it's really important part of selling. I think that if we want to be a local producer and we want to benefit from that, I think it's important to attach ourselves to a policy or a plan of interacting with everybody around us. And here this farm is well known. People come into the village. For example, when we won the Environmental Stewardship Award, the billboard at the municipality posted it. It was flashing on there for a month. Everybody was proud of the fact that somebody from here was recognized for their work, and that they can help too because they come and buy our beef too.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it really creates that, community pride, and they feel the connection that they're taking action too by supporting your business. So we talked about, that local community feel, but in your own words, what would you say are the selling points about your product that draw customer interest? Is it, quality or the local feel? What is that like?
Our main selling point would be a 100% local product, which we have on the side of our trailer painted. We have it on our business card, and we have full traceability. Every animal that's harvested here was born and raised here. And people, if they want to know, I tell them, if they say, well, how was that animal? I say, well, I can give you its pedigree and tell you which of the farms or rental farms or whatever that we operate on, it was raised on, and give everything about it. And people appreciate that.
That's definitely advantage of, being a purebred operation. On the other side, you have kind of that storytelling piece that you can really trace back for the customer, which I imagine is a big kind of interest for them.
Yeah, some people will say, well, that bull over there, can I go and pet him? Well, most of our bulls don't allow to be petted, but occasionally somebody can actually get beside them and get a selfie with them. And so that's part of the story they send to their family and friends.
Yeah, there's nothing like a photo op to draw interest for sure. Along that marketing piece, we've talked about that you're VBP Plus certified. How do you incorporate the VBP Plus program into your marketing?
Well, we have been selling for a long time, and we developed our Ferme Sage beef logo, and we feel that was really important for us, and decided after looking at the VBP Plus program that it required absolutely no changes for us. And at the same time, with our sign posted and whatever, some people will ask about it and say, well, it just shows that it's not only our certification, but we have a reminder that there are people right across Canada that are approaching raising beef the same way, animal welfare, environment, overall have a plan when you raise animals, how you deal with them. And that's something that can be passed on to the next generation, whatever. So it's easy. People can easily look at it and see whether we need to modify it from time to time. So I think it's a real good tool that we have to remind ourselves, because we do things over and over and sometimes we leave something out. So that way we know we haven't left anything out.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that broader regional piece. It's almost a way to bring up, yeah, we're doing all these great things, and that's happening across the board. There's lots of folks doing a really great job in the beef industry, which kind of goes back to that education piece. So that's great to hear.
Mostly in seeing that we adapt to society today with their different demands and everything, so that if we have a program that's been evaluated across Canada in different places and with different expertise, I think we can grow the knowledge with people that we are constantly working to get better. We just aren't stuck somewhere and insist that that's the way things are done because they were always done that way. People have a different reaction when they see animals today than they did 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 40 years ago. People have a different response immediately. Top of the mind is, well, are they polluting? Are they doing this? Are they doing something else to my environment? And it's important that as cattle producers, that we constantly update our knowledge so that we can answer those questions and show them in practice how it actually works on the farm. And it's not just in the headlines where they might get the striking things, but not really the reality day to day.
Yeah, things have changed over the years for sure, and it's good to know that that program, offers value to you in marketing that part of things too. I want to jump. We've talked about kind of the trust and how cattle are raised for a while, and I want to jump now to the end product and talk a little bit more about marketing the beef and how that all works. So we talked about some of the things maybe that people are looking for, like what cuts they're most enthusiastic about. What product or cut would you say that you have the most trouble selling?
One of the most challenging are things like sirloin and round cuts if we don't want to turn them into ground beef because they're very lean. And we do have some customers that want the leanest product, so that's easy. We explain how an animal develops and how some parts of the muscle cuts are leaner than others, and so we see sirloin or whatever the really lean cuts. Sometimes we have more on hand than anything with a rib cut or loin or some of those like they're almost all pre-ordered, and so occasionally somebody will come and see 3 or 4 rib steaks there, and they grab them really quickly, 1.25 inch rib steak with some marbling in it. I mean, if they happen to see them in the freezer, it doesn't last long. So it's how do we deal with it? It's a challenge, but we try to get people to buy a variety of cuts and try something new each time. And if they come and they always want the same cut, we'll suggest the next time they get something else with it and try it.
That's great. Yeah, that personal connection with your customers would really help with that because you can have that ability to make that suggestion. Whereas if there isn't that interaction, they're kind of just going to pick up whatever they think they want. And if they don't have someone there to talk to, they'll just say, oh, they don't have that cut I was looking for and move on. So that would be really
But
helpful
that's
to
one of
have
the
that.
things that's happened. Grocery stores used to have a butcher at the back, and they'd take the side of beef and they'd cut the cut the person wanted. But
Hmm.
that's no longer financially or economically feasible, and so there's nobody. And so occasionally, when they get the chance to actually chat with somebody with some cuts in hand and looking at them, well, it's a return to the past, actually, for some people.
Hmm. And somebody to talk to about, how do I cook this or how should I prepare this to make it enjoyable? And, yes, there's Google for that, but you never know if something's going to turn out. And having that personal connection, a friend or a neighbor recommending a recipe is a lot different than trying to figure it out on your own. And I think that's a lot less intimidating to people too. So a great way to encourage them to try something new.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's great. And we were having a beer after golf 2 weeks ago, and somebody said, "Well, I see the price have gone up. How's that affected you and everything?" And then, well, what about this cut? Can I still get that? And so, it's surprising. You wouldn't believe, the discussions you get around the table after a golf round with a beer.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's interesting. The price of food, I think, really is driving people to consider some of these cuts that they might not have either. So it's great that they have a resource to turn to learn how to do that.
Yeah, well, during COVID, at start of COVID, we hadn't ever sold a whole brisket, and all of a sudden, people were going buying these smokers, and they wanted to buy a whole brisket. Well, that's a pretty big chunk, 30 some pounds or whatever. But we sold quite a few of them. Now they've gone back. Some people want brisket, but they'll take a half of one or whatever.
Yeah, not quite feeding a whole golf tournament, maybe just one group.
Well, they've still got the smoker sitting there, and they wonder what they're going to do with it. So they have to have something. So.
For sure. Yeah. So, I want to jump back to when we chatted about processing, and that you kind of planned your inventory by scheduling dates a year in advance. Do you have a regular partnership with a processor or do you use multiple? How does that relationship work for you?
All of our beef has been processed at the same place since 2004. So that's getting a good run with the same one. I believe we've got to develop partnerships in our business. So I always feel I'm in partnership with my client and with my supplier of service or goods. And so I'm in the middle of that three-way partnership all the time. And as long as as we can work it out, that works. So we're dealing with an abattoir, the abattoir Bowman, which changed hands, but we still deal there. And it's about an hour and 45 minutes from here. And so we take the animals there and then we pick it up 3 weeks later. We ask them to hang it for 3 weeks aged. And then we send them, when we take the animals in for each animal, we send a cutting directions, how to package and prepare that animal. So each one is done. And as a result, well, the sticker on each package has the last 9 digits or their RFID number. So we know from which animal every cut that we sell comes from.
I like how you put that as a partnership because it really is a win-win. They know that you're consistently going to keep bringing them supply to work with, and the product that you're getting from them and the process, and can work through that to really fine-tune it.
Important because we had people who were saying when there were some issues, the abattoir, well, they called me and said I couldn't bring mine in and this and that. How do you do it and everything? And I said, well, what's your deal with them? Or have you been consistent in going there? And in the fact that some people try to do seasonal, and so I insist you can't operate an abattoir on a seasonal basis. And so I make sure that, as I said, we prepare the animals a long time. We prepare the schedule. We know which date we have in each month for a year in advance. And we're there with those animals when that arrives. And if we can't, a month ahead of time, if we know we're going to be short or something's going to happen, we'll call them, talk to them about how we can deal with that. So we make sure that and they appreciate it too, because they know if they have staff there's going to be something to do and what's going to be done. So we've got to deal with this together. We can't look at the other part of the supply chain as being the enemy here.
Yeah, no, that predictability is important on both sides for sure. You mentioned seasonality in there, and I want to ask a follow-up question on that. And you mentioned, sending the cutting instructions for each animal. Do you change your cutting instructions at all based on the season? And, say as you're approaching barbecue season, change it to include more cuts that are more popular then, or is it pretty consistent around the year?
Oh, it'll change from month to month. Yeah. Yeah, it varies depending on what we have on hand left, whatever. If we know an event's coming, for example, if there's a cycle fest at Mosey Marie, then we'd know they have mountain biking festivals and whatever, and so they'll order a bunch of burgers or something that could be done. Like even somebody had quite a large order of short ribs that they could do in barbecue for that or something like that. So we try to, with our partners, our customers, we try to see what's coming along, and we get things prepared for that.
Really a lot of planning that goes into that the average customer would never see. So that's very interesting to hear from the behind the scenes perspective. So I know when you're selling beef as the final product versus cattle, there's some different regulations that you have to deal with, and they're very different in each province from what I know as well. What are the regulations like in Quebec for selling your own beef? Have there been any regulatory challenges or changes that you've had to make or navigate?
Regulations haven't changed much. Sometimes we'd like them to change. It's strictly controlled that in order to sell meat or anything of that type, you have to have it processed in a government inspected abattoir, and that's been one of the difficulties for a lot of places when they have to travel long distances or they're just in their region don't have an inspected abattoir. So we have the two types of inspection, a provincial and a federal plants. We don't have a federal plant close by. There was one not that far, but they closed up and turned it into a cannabis processing plant. Which was unfortunate. But the one of the challenges we see right here for a lot of people is they want to sell into Ontario because we're close to the Ontario border. So interestingly, we can sell animals over there, and the person over there, if he buys it, can bring it to a Quebec abattoir and take the meat back for their consumption, but we can't sell the meat into Ontario. So for some people, that is a little bit of a problem. We can sell to a client if we want to meet them somewhere and, and transfer it, and they can take their product, but we can't. But for us, we always try to work within the system. And I think it's a good thing to have food safety is essential. We don't want to take any risk for our clients. And, somebody could make a mistake sometime, and I want that certificate or that statement on it's been inspected on our product. So, and in order to sell our product, we had to have somebody in the family take a food safety course, although we receive it in frozen in vacuum packed packages, and we hand it to somebody the same way. That certificate's there, and it's renewed each year, which is it's got fees associated with it. But other than that, the challenges aren't particularly great if we want to follow the rules and we want to make sure we're going to be in business for a long time.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned, the importance of the food safety. Like the regulations are there for a reason, for the customers to have confidence. But for sure, I've heard other commodities talk about the interprovincial trade as an issue too. I was talking to someone from Ontario recently, and they wanted to bring back BC wine, but you can't buy BC wine in Ontario. You have to go there to get it and bring it back. So not a just beef issue for sure, but yeah, interesting to hear how you've had that market demand coming from Ontario. So you mentioned earlier that your operation evolved from being a commercial herd to a purebred herd, and then made the decision to start selling beef directly as well. What kind of drove you to make that choice, or what was the reasoning behind expanding your business that way?
It might surprise a lot of people, but in the 90s and still even today in our region, selling feeder cattle that are Angus, they were sold at a discount. They're still not a premium animal. And having tested bulls and compared to other breeds, I knew that the performance of my animals after rigorous selection were as good as any, regardless of breed and everything. And then we thought, well, let's add value. Let's see what kind of value we can get. So bulls, for example, that we're not going to sell or we decide aren't going to be the best breeding bulls, we finish them out and we can take them to the abattoir and get full value in cuts. We have a special management because we keep them as bulls. We evaluate them before we select, rather than select before evaluating. Every animal is evaluated, and then we can feed them out. And dealing with bulls, you can't have a large group. We got to make sure that they don't travel to the abattoir alone. They don't mix with any other animals. We make sure they do that so that we get quality beef from bulls. And in heifers as well that are open or whatever will go that way. So we managed to find out that as cuts of beef, Angus beef is a premium, whereas when we were selling calves at weaning, we were selling a discount. So we captured that added value for our farm.
Interesting. Yeah, I know I'm a purebred breeder as well, and we see sometimes our steers or our calves that don't make the cut for seed stock, they're almost a byproduct, and they should sell at a discount because they don't have that hybrid vigor of a crossbred commercial herd. But there's a lot of value that's left on the table there that could be captured. So it's very interesting to hear how you guys have capitalized upon that and created a diversified business that way.
Well, there was experiences in there. There was some groups of bulls we had for a while in the 90s. We had two or early 2000. We had bulls that were tested. We had some born late in the summer, and we'd have a late test, and then we decided that the ones that we decided not to sell for breeding, we put together a quite large group, and we had somebody place them in a commercial feedlot where they had steers, heifers, and everything. With at that time 20 plus years of selection and everything, our bulls, which were heavy feeders when they went on feed, outperformed any of the implanted steers that were in that feedlot. And we got several percent better yield on carcasses. Bulls will yield better. So if you manage them right, there is no reason why we should be discounted. And but even before that, for some of the tests, we'd have a few bulls, and I'd contact somebody directly in Toronto. And when they'd have some animals go, I dealt with a buyer for St. Helens, and I said, you make sure they're on the truck, and there's a group of 4 or 5. They'll be in the tail or wherever in the truck alone. They don't get mixed and everything. They'll go there, and they're virgin bulls and everything. And we never got discounted for a bull. We got top quality carcasses. So, yeah, it's up to everybody to not blame somebody else for what doesn't work. You just go out and you get the value that you should have. Sometimes it takes a little extra work, and you got to stick your neck out. You got to call people.
Wow, that's interesting. I have never heard a comparison on performance between bulls and steers before, so that's interesting. So, to finish off, hearing how you've really created a business case for adding this enterprise to your farm, do you have any advice for producers that are considering this and maybe are wanting to start selling beef off the farm?
Well, that's a question I often get because people have lots of preconceived notions. So what I'd say immediately is learn to produce a consistent product efficiently first. Know what you've got, know how to do it, and then with that product, find a way to sell it and select for or choose a couple of important characteristics you're going to aim for. I often see people, well, we're going to have grass-fed, no antibiotics, a specific breed, this and that. By this time, they've got a list a mile long, and they can only produce 5 animals a year that'll fit that category. So be careful. Don't set the bar too high, because you're going to have a long learning process. We argue about it here. Well, which way we're going to get that cut? Well, the next season's going to be a different cut. And then are the animals ready? Do they have enough finish? There's just so many considerations when you're doing it. So you better have a good product to start with. I think what they say is bad grapes always make bad wine. Good grapes can make good wine or bad wine. And a good beef product that you raise can make good or bad beef to the consumer, depending on how you prepared it. So it's really important.
Great advice. Yeah, I think sometimes we want to start a big project and kind of have a big lofty goal for the type of product that we want to sell, and really narrowing down that vision, as you said, and picking what are we best at, what can we really specialize in and do a good job of, is an important way to refine where you're going. Well, thank you very much, Stan, for joining the podcast today. It was really great to hear your experience from your business and all the learnings that you've had, and of course, all the great work that you're doing in the community as well, talking to folks about the beef industry, but also really building community around the farm. It's great to hear. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Simply Verified Beef podcast. Tune in next month for the next episode. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Simply Verified Beef.